Hello there.
The room is quiet, but not the comforting kind of quiet. It's the kind that hums softly in your ears, like something unsaid lingering in the air. A faint glow from your phone screen lights up the ceiling, casting shifting shadows that stretch and shrink as you scroll without really seeing anything. Outside, the world moves on, cars passing, distant laughter, someone closing a door somewhere. But in here, time feels slower. You lie there, staring upward, as if the ceiling might have answers hidden in its cracks. Your thoughts drift, not in a straight line, but in circles. Familiar ones. The kind that come back when everything else fades away. There's a strange heaviness in your chest. Not sharp, not overwhelming. Just there. Quiet. Persistent. Like a whisper that refuses to leave. You think about the things you haven't done yet. The plans that are still just ideas. The expectations, some spoken, some never said out loud, that seem to hang over you like invisible weight. And it's not that you haven't tried. You have. In ways no one really sees. But in moments like this, it doesn't feel like enough. The silence stretches a little longer. You turn to your side, pulling the blanket closer, as if warmth might quiet the noise in your head. It doesn't. Because this isn't the kind of noise you can drown out. It's quieter than that. It's the kind that sounds like a question you don't want to answer, but can't ignore either. And maybe that's where it begins, the question that quietly lingers beneath everything else. What if I'm falling behind? It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself like fear in movies, with dramatic music or sudden panic. Instead, it slips in gently, disguising itself as comparison, as curiosity, as a harmless glance at someone else's life. Like scrolling through a feed where everyone seems to be moving forward, getting somewhere, becoming something. And you're just here, paused. Or at least, that's how it feels. It's strange how we measure ourselves. Not by where we started, or how far we've come, but by where we think we should be. As if life were a straight road with clear milestones, and missing one means you've somehow taken a wrong turn. But life isn't really like that. It's more like walking through a foggy field. You can only see a few steps ahead, and everyone's path bends in different directions. Some walk faster. Some stop to rest. Some disappear into the mist entirely, only to reappear somewhere unexpected. And yet, we still compare. Maybe the fear of being seen as a failure isn't really about failure itself. Maybe it's about being *seen star. About standing under an invisible spotlight, feeling like every unfinished goal, every delay, every detour is being quietly judged, even when no one is actually watching. It's a deeply human thing, this quiet fear. Wanting to be understood, to be accepted, to feel like we are doing okay in a world that rarely pauses to say, you're allowed to take your time. So if you've ever felt this subtle, persistent worry that you're not enough, or not there yet, it makes sense. It really does. Because you're not just carrying your own expectations. You're carrying the echoes of everyone else's, too. I remember one night that felt a lot like this. I was sitting at a small desk by the window, the kind that wobbles slightly if you lean on it too hard. The paint on its surface was chipped at the corners, revealing the wood underneath. A cup of coffee sat beside my laptop, already cold, untouched for who knows how long. Outside, the streetlights flickered faintly, casting a dull orange glow that barely reached into the room. It was late. The kind of late where everything feels heavier than it should. My screen was filled with unfinished work. Half-written ideas. Drafts I kept starting and abandoning. I remember staring at them, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, but nothing came out. It wasn't that I had nothing to say. It was that everything I wanted to say felt not good enough. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow breath, and for a moment, I just listened. The faint hum of the fan. A distant motorcycle passing by. The quiet ticking of the clock on the wall, each second landing a little too loudly in the silence. And then, almost without thinking, I reached for my phone. I opened social media. Big mistake. There they were, people my age, or even younger, sharing milestones, promotions, achievements, announcements written with confidence, like they knew exactly where they were going. Their lives looked certain. I scrolled slowly, my chest tightening just a little more with each post. I remember this one picture in particular, someone smiling, holding something they had worked toward for years. The caption talked about persistence, about finally making it. And I just sat there, staring at it longer than I should have, because in that moment, I wasn't happy for them. I was measuring myself against them, and I didn't like what I saw. I looked back at my own reflection in the darkened screen, faint and slightly distorted. It felt like looking at someone I didn't fully recognize. Someone who was trying, but not quite arriving anywhere. That night, I didn't fix anything. I didn't suddenly find clarity or motivation. I just closed my laptop, turned off the light, and lay down in the same quiet room. But the feeling followed me. That quiet, persistent thought. What if this is all I'll ever be? It took me a while to understand that the question itself wasn't the problem. What if this is all I'll ever be? At first, it sounded like a verdict, like something final. But over time, I started to hear it differently, not as an answer, but as a reflection of how tired I was from trying to measure my life against timelines that were never really mine. Because the truth is, that version of enough I kept chasing, it kept moving. Every time I thought I got closer, it shifted a little further away. Quietly, almost politely, as if it didn't want to be caught. And maybe that's what made the fear feel so constant. Not because I was failing, but because I was chasing something that was never meant to stay still. I began to notice smaller things. Not all at once, and not in some dramatic, life-changing moment, but gradually. Like how the pressure in my chest softened on days when I wasn't trying so hard to prove something. Or how certain moments, simple ones, almost forgettable, felt lighter when I wasn't silently comparing them to someone else's highlight reel. There was a kind of quiet relief in realizing that not every path needs to look impressive to be meaningful. That maybe progress isn't always loud or visible. Sometimes it looks like getting through a day you almost didn't have the energy for. Sometimes it's choosing to rest without turning it into guilt. Sometimes it's continuing, even when you're not sure where it's all going. And maybe being seen as a failure isn't as concrete as it feels in our heads. Maybe it's more like a shadow, shaped by the light we keep pointing at ourselves. Because when that light softens, even just a little, the shadow doesn't disappear, but it becomes less defining, less absolute, more human. So maybe tonight doesn't need to be about figuring everything out. Maybe it's enough to just be here, lying in the quiet, feeling the weight of your thoughts without rushing to escape them. Letting them exist, not as enemies to defeat, but as passing weather. Some nights are heavier, yes. Some questions linger longer than we'd like. But that doesn't mean they define who you are. There's a softness in realizing that you don't have to win against these thoughts to move forward. You don't have to prove, perform, or arrive anywhere by a certain time just to be worthy of your own life. You're allowed to be unfinished. You're allowed to take detours that don't make sense to anyone else yet. You're allowed to grow in ways that aren't visible, in directions that don't get applause. And maybe, just maybe, this quiet fear you carry isn't a sign that you're failing, but a sign that you care, that you're trying, that somewhere inside you, there's still hope, even if it feels small. So if the room feels a little too quiet tonight, and your thoughts start circling again, you don't have to push them away. Just breathe. Stay a little longer. And gently ask yourself, what if I'm not behind, but simply becoming in my own time?
Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.